All right. Floor is yours, Karen. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks so much. And thanks everybody for being here today. I'm Karen Archambault. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Success at Rowan College at Burlington County. I also have the privilege of serving as an affiliate faculty member for the NJCU doctoral program. And one of the fantastic things about that opportunity is that this past spring, I had the opportunity to teach the partnerships class in the program. And after completing that class and hearing the feedback from our students about the panelists that we had brought into the class to speak with them, Christina and I talked about the value of sort of bringing that to the masses and having the opportunity for more people to hear from the folks who had been willing to come and speak to the doctoral class. So I am incredibly grateful to the panelists who have been willing to participate here today. I'm going to very briefly just name them, and then I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So with us today, we have Dr. Jermaine Williams, who serves as the president of Montgomery College in Maryland. We have Dr. Jennifer Brown, who is the interim vice chancellor for student affairs at Windward Community College in Hawaii. And we have Anna Pianzo Cotton, who is the chief operations officer for the Center for Family Services and has previously served as the vice president for workforce development at Rowan College at Burlington County with me. So Jermaine, why don't you start with a bit of an introduction about yourself, your institution, and then we'll take it from there.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be with you. Appreciate the invitation. It's wonderful to see a fellow panelist, and good afternoon to everyone out there. If you're in Eastern Standard Time Zone, and if you're somewhere not, then I would say good morning. Jermaine Williams, been in higher education for about 20 years. I'll be brief, and just, long story short, fell in love with community colleges quite some time ago. I've been at 4-year institutions and 2-year institutions as well. And started about a couple decades ago at St. John's University in Queens, New York. And I've worked at Temple University, Community College of Philadelphia, Northeastern Illinois University in Chicago. I've worked at North Shore Community College in Massachusetts. And prior to being president of Montgomery College, I was president of Nassau Community College, which is one of the 30 community colleges in the SUNY system. So just excited to be here. Montgomery College, we serve about 43,000 students a year, both credit and non-credit. We have 3 campuses, 2 workforce development sites, 2 community engagement centers. We are an HSI as well as an ANAPESI. To complement that, about 26% of our students identify as African American or Black, right? IPEDS category. So we are extremely diverse. We reside in an affluent county here in Maryland. With that said, there's still so much opportunity. There are still pockets of poverty and gaps in terms of income. So those are 2 items that drive my work and that I'm very passionate about. So I will stop there, and I know we'll get into some deeper conversation.
Thank you so much. Jen, we'll go to you.
Good morning from Hawaii. Yes, it is still morning for us here, so thank you for that, Jermaine. My name is Jen Brown. As Karen mentioned, I'm currently the interim vice chancellor for student affairs at Windward Community College. Windward Community College is part of the University of Hawaii system. We are one of the smaller community college campuses, and we're on the windward side of Oahu, which is where the capital, Honolulu, is. We are a Native Hawaiian serving institution, and we work primarily, again, with our windward side. So we're a little more remote. The island isn't all that big, but we are outside of the city, more of kind of a country type feel on this side. My background, actually, I spent most of my career in 4-year institutions, both public and private, but really fell in love with transfer work and supporting transfer students. And prior to this current role, I worked at the University of Hawaii at Manoa as a transfer specialist, where I actually split my time between community college campuses, First Kapiolani Community College and later Hawaii Community College as well, and really strongly focused on transfer and partnership. And that's how I then ended up here as well. So thank you for having me today, Karen.
And last but not least, Anna.
Great. Good day, everyone. Thank you, Karen, for having me. It's really a pleasure to be part of this panel. As Karen mentioned, I currently serve as Chief Operating Officer for Center for Family Services. We're a behavioral health agency with a 100-year history of helping people transform their lives and transform their communities. I have responsibility for early childhood education, family support and prevention, safe and supportive housing, workforce development, and victim and trauma response services. Primarily based in South Jersey, but again, serving throughout the state of New Jersey. Until just last semester, until just 3 weeks ago, I served as Vice President of Workforce Development for Rowan College at Burlington County, where I was responsible for establishing the Workforce Development Institute, which through collaboration with many system partners provided career services and entrepreneurial learning services, as well as corporate training, professional and continuing education, and adult education to the region. Prior to that, I've had convening and partnership development responsibilities and roles as Human Services Director at the county level and Program and Housing Development leadership roles in another nonprofit behavioral health agency. So I'm excited to talk about this from a couple different perspectives. And really, again, just thank you for having me.
So the way we're going to sort of run the panel is I'm going to pose a question and allow for each of the panelists to respond, but also feel free, obviously, panelists to respond to each other as well as to the question that I'm posing. So Anna, given your unique framework in both the community college role and the partner of community college role, I'd like to start with you on a question regarding your view of partnerships and the benefit that partnerships provide both for the community college and for the partner organization.
Thank you so much, Karen. And I think thinking about this, it really starts with, especially as publicly funded institutions, none of us can do the work we set out to do alone. The work is so big, the need is so profound. So it really starts there. We really need each other to be able to help people truly be able to transform their lives and change the trajectory of their communities. But related to that, sort of just what capacity do we have as individual institutions is the fact that we all have different, we have so much fragmentation within our system regarding the distinct and specific buckets we're contracted to serve, permitted to serve, right? How people qualify for different resources. So that's something we were really mindful of when we started the Workforce Development Institute in Burlington County. We were really guided by trying to kind of address that on both ends. On the one hand, businesses were telling us they either couldn't find or couldn't access the talent. They could find employees, but didn't have the talent and the skills that they needed when they could find those employees, right? And on the other hand, our sort of fragmented system, people who were eligible for education, eligible for training, were not able to afford it, not able to find it, not aware of what training was available, and really, really had limitations to accessing these opportunities that our businesses were saying, we're desperate for these people, we're desperate for these people. So really trying to connect those dots across the system to really address not just the personal disconnect, but the economic disconnect that we were seeing happening within our region. Community colleges are uniquely positioned to serve as a connector to solve this problem because we're able to really nimbly really partner and really work with the many different people and institutions that are necessary to solve that problem. So, obviously, like the benefits to the businesses then as they're involved are having well-prepared, future-ready employees whom they know will meet their needs. The hands-on involvement in the design of educational experience and the opportunity to structure experiential learning so that students can be trained throughout their education and then the employees can get their pick of the candidates who they have prepared as they go through their educational process. It takes a tremendous amount of stress off of the pipeline problem for the employees and the business, the industry leadership in the region. And it allows them to upskill their existing employees as well. And I think from the student perspective and from the community perspective, really for us, it's been about being able to reach prospective students and serve these students better through the partnerships. We've spent a lot of time reflecting, especially on adult learners and how we get folks re-engaged with education. So, I think many of us are familiar with the data around that's been sort of shared widely, but through the Council of Adult and Experiential Learning, that the completion rates are just so much higher for folks who are involved in prior learning assessment and structured opportunities to really connect their hands-on learning and their work experience with their educational credits. They're taking additional credits, they're graduating, and they're persisting much more consistently than those who are not able to directly tie the work that they're doing in college to the work that they're doing in their day jobs on a daily basis. And so those are just, there's a lot, I think there's others to talk about it. So there are a lot of benefits, but, really looking to really connect those dots is I think what needs to drive and what's been important in driving our partnership development.
Thanks, Anna. I think it's, you sort of keyed in on the intersection with adult learning, and everything we know about adult learning theory says adults need to have something to attach prior experience, future experience together. So Jermaine, I'll turn to you for your thoughts.
Thank you very much. I don't know what else to add, Anna. Oh my goodness, that was and I knocked it out of the park. So that was fantastic, Sai. So I'll just do a yes and on that. And I think about your comment about being connectors, right? And being community colleges uniquely positioned. And when we think about, partnerships in terms of, how many of us, in the kind of the throes of the pandemic, where do we find ourselves? Being that point of connectivity, right? Being that pivotal component of our communities. We think about partnerships, 2 of our campuses served as sites for vaccination and COVID testing, right? 37,000 approximately vaccinations were administered, 47,000, tests were conducted on 2 of our 3 campuses, thinking about standing up, free food distribution sites. And to one of the points you made earlier, Anna, a program to retrain workers displaced by the pandemic and retrain them specifically in biotechnology and, those needed opportunities that kind of arose from the pandemic. So when you think about, that, it really, whatever the situation is, and I think that's a little bit that I would add to that is whatever the situation is in our community, that's why we're here, right? We are the community's college for whatever community we serve. So we go deep and we find out what those community needs are, whether it's a pandemic or something, maybe a little more of a stable time. And you think about experiential learning. I had this wonderful opportunity to attend an experiential learning conference that we had at Montgomery College just a few weeks ago, I think it was. And I heard, about, students who were working with community members and groups who are, environmental science students who are cataloging plants, and sociology students who have conducted community interviews, right? And health students who surveyed vaccine hesitant residents, and some of our education students who are even, they designed a curriculum, right, that we didn't have. And you think about that and what we're providing, because the community is the focus, right? It's the core of what we do. And we all know, like, I'll just end with this, kind of that experiential opportunity. We know there's so many times where that creates the linkage, right? That creates the aha moment. That could either, keep a student, engaged. That could say, wow, I really understand why this applies to what I'm learning in class. It fosters so many different opportunities, including the idea of being a lifelong learner. So there's just so many wonderful components of those partnerships that we all embrace as community colleges. It's obviously, what we're here to do. So.
Thanks, Jermaine. And Jen, I know that Anna and Jermaine have both given fantastic answers. So I'm going to open the floor to you, but I'm also going to let you know that you're going to start our next question. So if you'd like to just say yes, and and make a comment or two, we can move to the next question whenever you're ready.
Yes, and I wanted to mention, I think you both really highlighted all the benefits to our partners in our communities, but I think one thing that we learned, especially during the pandemic, is that all of the work that our college had done in building those partnerships and supporting the community and meeting community needs really has led to the community advocating for us as well, to advocate for them, advocating with our legislators who determine our budgets, to letter writing campaigns to the president about why certain programs need to be on this side of the island and things like that as well. So there's that strong connection that really, I think, it goes both ways also. And that was a very, I think, visual and very real reminder of that during that very hard time with budget cuts and freezes and all of the associated things that happened in the last couple of years. And now we can go to the next question.
Yeah, that's a great addition, though. I think it's important to make sure that when we are thinking about partnerships, that we're thinking about there needs to be a mutual benefit, right? It's a partnership that only benefits one partner probably isn't going to be sustained by the other. So that's a great point. So for the next question, we're going to get a little bit more specific. And I'd like each of you to think about a specific partnership that you or your team initiated that you think was either particularly valuable looking back at it or shows a lot of future promise. And talk a little bit about the why of that partnership, and talk a little bit with us about how you determined that the partnership would be would have that potential value. So Jen, I'll start with you.
Okay, I am going to focus. We have a partnership program called CUT-EA, which is a degree pathway program. It's dual admission, dual enrollment. It's actually was the crux of the work that I did as a transfer specialist for UH Manoa. And the partnership began prior to me being here in Hawaii, but it started as an agreement between Manoa and one of the community colleges. I don't think I mentioned this before. There are 7 community colleges in our system. So it started as an agreement with the one closest to the university that sent the most transfer students. And it started really from an awareness that there were some concerns that students were transferring with a lot of excess credits, that things weren't working so well, right? Things were not kind of coming over very well. So the program started as a way to try to address that. And initially there were no additional staff, right? It was just, okay, we're going to do this partnership. We'll figure out how to fix it. And after a WASC review, the recommendation was to, okay, and WASC is Western Association of Schools and Colleges. So that's our accrediting body. This program has a lot of promise, but you really need people to make this happen in a really intentional way. And so that's where that transfer specialist role came in, with the going back and forth. And the focus was on academic advising and relationship building with our community college partners. So I essentially lived at my community college more than I was at my university, building those relationships, learning about the programs at the school, working directly with the students from the very beginning. Oh, you have any interest in transferring? Let's talk about what that might look like. Let's talk about the things that you need to consider. It expanded from the one partnership to 4 with all of the campuses on Oahu. So there are 4 community college campuses on this island in 2014. And then in 2015 to Maui, which is a neighboring island. And finally in 2018 to Hawaii and Kauai community colleges. So the program now exists as a partnership individually between the university and each community college campus. The success rates for students, I mean, we saw a lot of promise with this when we were, retention and graduation, of course, are always a big factor in metrics with student success, and the retention rates for students participating in the program versus students not participating in the program. It was very different. So it was between like 89 and 93% retention to the next year for students who transferred via CUT-EA. Whereas our regular transfer retention rates across all other groups were in the 30 to 50% range. So pretty significant difference. The students were allowed to take classes at the university before transfer, should they want to, should it make sense. We had a lot of kind of transition preparation, advising and support, and connecting students to help them make that jump. And really, I think the most important part, I think, of all of it was that everybody had to buy in, right? So at the beginning, and again, this predates me, but several of the people that started the program shared this with me on both sides. There was kind of a little bit of like, ooh, why are you coming to our campus? You're going to take our students before they're ready to go. You know, there's a little bit of kind of hesitation in what the reasoning is behind certain things. And just kind of a little, you know, because of the history of some of the less smooth parts of transfer going on, it took a while. And so those relationship parts and connecting with the various programs on each campus really became, I think, the key to getting it to start to work and build the trust across that. And so there are several transfer specialists now that each serve a couple of different community colleges to keep facilitating that kind of everyday connection. And a lot of the student feedback too was, I'm so thankful that I feel like the university really wants me, right? Like they're here to come and help me get there. So a lot of the assessment feedback where students would have open comments were related to appreciating that. And there were some other associated benefits as well. I mentioned enrolling in the classes, but also earlier registration. So students transferring through this program got to register as continuing students, or still get to register as continuing students, which makes a difference in that first semester of classes. And so I think that's it's definitely been very successful, and we've started to model other practices in our system off of that, even when they're not specifically within the program itself. I've been involved in a couple of other partnerships that I think see some process now as an administrator on the community college side, but I am still pretty new here, so I'll be very brief on this one. We have a couple of partnerships with our four-year institutions, and we've got grant funding for them. One in particular is around facilitating student parents and student parent transfer. So we have a Hawaiian immersion child care center here on our campus that serves students and now the community, though primarily students and their children, and a student parent center with a dedicated counselor and coordinator. And there's Hawaiian immersion workshops where the parents can bring their keiki and do these things together after they're done with their classes. And that's now expanded to partner with our Human Development and Family Studies program at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, in helping to prepare for a better transition for those that want to continue on and trying to find ways to continue that support. Still pretty new, but I think there's a lot of promise there. So.
Thanks, Jen. So Anna, I'll go to you. Anything that you want to highlight from your time at the community college, or things that you're starting to see already in your first few weeks at your new gig that look like they might be good partnerships for collaboration with the community college?
It's really hard to narrow down to one or two examples of this. I'll start with one that brings us a little bit full circle at this point. And I think, one of my early projects at our CVC was working on the Women in Sustainable Employment initiative, which was a partnership with a number of utility and construction industry employers who identified the need for a more diverse workforce, first and foremost, but also just in general, really emergent sort of retirement cliff that was approaching in the next 5 to 10 years, essentially, starting about 5 years ago. So we partnered. It was really led by PSEG at the time, but we had partnerships with South Jersey Industries, New Jersey American Water, so water utility, electric, gas provider, statewide, also somewhat local, also the Sisters in the Brotherhood, which is the support entity that really develops pipelines for women into construction jobs. Were some partners, and we had some other subcontracted partners who came along, but really sat down at the table, having had initial conversations, looking for help with hiring with PSE&G. They brought in some curriculum and some models that existed through the Center for Energy Workforce Development, which we then sat down with a room full of a number of partners and said, what are some common job titles, job skills, some areas that are that you need, where we can bring this this curriculum in, help do kind of a pre-employment preparation program, or pre-apprenticeship in some cases it developed into. But initially it was really just a boot camp to expose people to these incredible employment opportunities. And so the Workforce Development Board was actively involved in getting the word out, getting the information to American Job Center participants, as well as to community partners who we call pipeline partners, to inform them about this training opportunity. On the other end, employers were involved then in developing some key job descriptions, some key skills that would be highlighted, volunteered a lot of their time to provide actual, to serve as role models in many cases as part of 40 hours of kind of prep time. So that started as just an exposure, career exposure and industry exploration opportunity. Evolved with some grant funding to include energy industry fundamentals, which is a certificate, a certification that's industry recognized through the Center for Energy Workforce Development. And we've continued to sort of work on that network, work with that network to expand beyond there. So there's articulation pathways for participants in the class now for credit for continuing coursework. And more recently now we have partnered more regionally for the South Jersey Energy Partnership. So I was reflecting on the WISE program. I was reflecting on how we did something very similar with a machinist boot camp, which led to essentially creating an associate's degree in mechanical engineering technology with the same industry partners at the table, and all of them really coming to the table saying, we don't care so much about the certification, we care about the skills, and we want to be able to know that the skills are being brought into our workforce. If you can help us build that, we start the conversation there, and then we connect with these partners who then become part of advisory boards. So in the machinist case, they're now part of an advisory board that is, that's the folks who helped build the machinist boot camp just for skills, helped us establish an industry recognized NIMS, National Institute of Metalworking Skills credential for the training program. And that served as a baseline. And many of those same industry partners are now members of the ABET accreditation advisory board for the mechanical engineering technology program. So starting from just what are the skills that you need us to do better at getting your potential future workers, we're able to get folks to help us build entire degree programs and then serve as advisors and continue to have hands-on roles in that work. So taking that foundation, we've recently expanded to have South Jersey Energy Partnership convening groups, as well as Manufacturing Alliance of South Jersey. Similar model, much broader in terms of industry leadership, working toward system-wide solutions, not only what do we need in terms of training and education, but sometimes it's advocacy, sometimes it's more business-to-business engagement and networking opportunities that they've worked to build. But we're part of now a larger network of community partners and education partners who are at the table kind of around the perimeter, listening to these needs and really actively then collaborating to implement solutions to address those needs. And that's where it's interesting to see now how that work in my new role, how we have this opportunity as a well-established community partner nonprofit to really be building those pipelines into those opportunities. The energy, for folks who are joining from throughout the world who may not be familiar, the energy industry, offshore wind energy is becoming part of the entire utility infrastructure in New Jersey right now. And so there's a number of contracts off the coastline that are helping, that are just developing. And so as those partners now, it's evolved to be really focused on the green energy jobs of the future and the wind energy in particular in South Jersey. Those partners are really helping and very invested and hands-on in creating workshops and career exploration. One of the last things I was able to do before I left RCBC was to have an energy career expo day at Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind's Wind Energy Training Center in partnership with Stockton and in partnership with a number of other utility providers who brought high school students and then young adult career explorers into the facility to talk to them about what their jobs are, to just the level of just, you know, of awareness and aha moments that took place with all of these high schoolers, seeing exactly what these opportunities are going to be for them in the coming years has just been profound. They had a drone demo. They were learning about inspecting wind turbines using drone technology and how they can get certified in that. And so, you know, that is just taking off. And all the partners are looking for folks who are embedded deeply within the communities to help prepare the students who may not even be thinking about college yet, who may not even be thinking, you know, that college is for them, if at all, to help them start to really get excited about these future industry jobs, and then for the training to kind of follow behind and catch up to get them there.
Great, thanks, Anna. So Jermaine, an example that you've got to share?
Sure, and I appreciate the comments, and I just want to throw out there, I don't know if I mentioned how long I've been at Montgomery College. It's been a little more than 100 days or so. So all the fantastic partnerships that I'm sharing are just forged by years and years of relationships that occurred prior to my arrival, and I'm just so thankful to have the role that I do have at Montgomery College, and looking to build on the partnerships and create new partnerships. And one of the one of our partnerships I did want to share, and I think we're all speaking to this idea of, you know, enhancing access and completion, and ultimately post-completion success in an equitable way that also creates a talented and educated workforce, right, that meets the needs of the regional economy, right, and creates opportunities for family sustaining wage, right, and social transformation, right, which I love about the previous comments. So for us, one of those partnerships is what we call ACES, and this is a powerful partnership that we have with K through 12 public school system and the universities at Shady Grove here in Montgomery County. And just as a little context, because this is important, there is no quote unquote four-year institution in Montgomery County, Maryland. What we do have is a very unique situation where the system, University of Maryland system, has 9 state institutions essentially that are located at one physical footprint in Montgomery County. So it's very interesting. Yes, super interesting. Yes. And so in Montgomery College provides about 75% of that undergraduate population for what's called the universities at Shady Grove. So this partnership is in its 7th year. It's called Achieving Collegiate Excellence and Success, ACES, and it currently serves more than 2,500 students, and they participate in a supportive pathway to the bachelor's degree, right? We work with 15 public high schools, and that's more than half of the public high schools in the Montgomery County public school system that we have here. And the goal has been achieved, is to provide a seamless pathway and an equitable pathway of support that starts in high school, that continues through community college, Montgomery College, and to the attainment of a bachelor's degree, right? To ensure college completion. So the results are just a sharp increase in college readiness, college applications, and graduation among students who are enrolled in ACES. They join immediately, some of them, the region's workforce, and contribute back to the local economy. Our ACES students are often first in their family to pursue college. They maybe just new arrivals. They may be from low income. They may have differing abilities, but the idea is that we are, in an equitable way, as I think we all are, attempting to enhance access and completion and post-completion success. And what we've identified, or what's been identified, thank you, Dr. Newton, with the ACES program, is that the students continue to have a higher first year, fall to fall retention rate when compared to students who are not in the program, right? Sometimes by as much as 19 percentage points, right? Course pass rates for ACES students are also higher than non-ACES students, sometimes by as much as 7 percentage points. They enjoy, and here kind of gets to the equity component of it, right? And I could talk more about it, and Dr. Newton just dropped the link in the chat, is students are afforded the opportunity for coaching, scholarships, visits to college campuses, mentoring, tutoring, guidance on taking assessment exams, applying for financial aid, and more. I would say one of the really interesting components that I've learned about ACEs is, while it starts in high school, right? The idea would be that high school and then Montgomery College and then universities at Shady Grove, the overarching goal is the same. And sometimes there's students who don't attend Montgomery College or universities at Shady Grove. So when you think about the philosophical context of, the goal is really to create an educated and engaged citizenry, right? And of course, I'm here at Montgomery College. I want students to come to Montgomery College. At the same time, I really love that the underpinnings of the program are all about advancement. They're all about kind of why community colleges were founded. Just enhancing education, making it accessible, high quality, low cost education, so that there can be social transformation. So that's one of the several partnerships that we have, and obviously we're very proud of it. So.
And time is flying. I am just going to say I appreciate the shout out to Shady Grove, because the most fun job I ever had was actually at Universities of Shady Grove. So, but it didn't occur to me until the middle of this conversation, because I have known all of you for multiple jobs for every one of you. And it didn't occur to me until you were all talking how short of a time that you have actually all spent in your current positions. And so I want to kind of key in on that in the last question that I'm going to ask, since we are short on time. And Jermaine, I'm going to start with you on this one. But I'd like to just hear your thoughts about how you get buy-in from your institutions when the way I originally wrote the question was, when you don't know that much maybe about the partner that you're trying to engage with, but also I'm gonna add in there, when you are the new kid on campus, when you are the new person at your institution, how do you garner that buy-in for partnerships? So Jermaine, I'll start with you.
Absolutely, and being sensitive and cognizant of the time, I will be somewhat brief. I will say, so when I transitioned, and even before I transitioned, I made a few promises to both our students, faculty, and staff, and our external constituents, is that I would listen. I would hear, I would listen, I would learn. I would also provide, kind of validity checks. I would share the information back so people could say, oh, Jermaine, you know what? You really nailed it on this one. That is exactly what I said. Or no, you're slightly off, or you're way off on that. So coming in, and I know it sounds, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but it's the idea of, learning, and just really throwing yourself into that learning journey, and everything, on the table. It's, having individuals coalesce around common goals involves engaging our constituents, right? So making a student-centered situation involves obviously listening to students. On top of that, we need to create the actual scenarios for our faculty and staff to provide that excellent educational and academic support, opportunities. If we need to create those partnerships with business and industry. So, and I say that because coming in, it's you get so many things thrown at you as you transition, that it can be challenging to listen at times, because everybody, there's such a big agenda, and everyone's, so what's your vision? What's your, I'm like, well, my vision is to, as I probably listen and learn, and ideally, about 6 months, reflect back what I would hope to be a shared vision, where everyone can see themselves in our path forward. So maybe a bit of an oversimplification, but the importance of listening and understanding the communities that you serve, I don't think can be it can be overemphasized. So
Thank you. Anna, we'll go to you.
So I get to say yes, and also, I mean, my first point is just to listen first, right? Make sure that you're listening first, but also to know your weaknesses and be willing to hear what weaknesses can be identified by the partners. And I think it's interesting how you reframe the question, because I was thinking about it in terms of partnering, but as I think about sort of having just recently transitioned from a higher education setting to now a community agency, how we look at partnership here and how vital community partners were to the work we were doing, but also how easy it is to take for granted or to take or to just assume that the funding doesn't need to be equitable in those relationships, right? So I think part of the listening is also how are you going to share and track revenue? And how are we going to participate together collectively in defining programs that are going to help lift up all of the partners collectively? It can be very easy to take a very single-minded institutional perspective or revenue generating perspective on a program or a degree or a training, whatever it is, or grant funding even. And so I'm sitting here now in a new seat, really learning actively from our agency about how we've been serving the 41,000 residents we serve across the state, and meeting them where they are, and then helping to lift up the other community partners we're working with through through our collective funding. There's some great examples. We're running short on time, so I won't go into too much, but I'll just note the Camden Promise Neighborhood Program is a phenomenal example, and it follows the Harlem Children's Zone model of work that's being done through collective empowerment around the country on one of a handful of programs. And, with pipelines from early childhood education through college career and following students with career readiness programming as they finish high school as one great example. But there's a lot of funding for the partners in that process that I think higher education really could, can really help advance a lot of the work that's being done by making sure to adopt a similar model in the partnerships that are moving forward to support the students we're aiming to serve better.
And Jen, I'll give you the last words on building your partnerships.
To say yes and yes and. I think having, like you mentioned, listening and learning, having genuine curiosity about what are the needs of the partner. When I started this interim role, my chancellor said to me, there's no way for you to know everything. So you just need to come at it with some love and some curiosity. And then as you get to know, you're going to develop into the leader you'll be here, but also that I think translates really well to the partnerships as well. What is our common goal and how can we get there together? And thank you.
Thanks so much. We are ending exactly on time, and that is something I didn't know was going to happen 3 minutes ago. So thank you all so much for being here, and my thanks to our panelists. Thank you all for saying yes to being here. If that's the sort of our theme for the session is yes and. Thank you all for being here, and all of our participants. Thank you for being here as well. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the convening of the NJCU program.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Karen, for doing a great job leading. This dialogue was very, very informative and inspiring. So thank you to everyone. And we now get a half-hour Zoom break. So your next session start in a half an hour. So enjoy yourself. Don't run away too far, though. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.